As part of the Money in Politics team here at Forbes, you have found the net worth of House Speaker Mike Johnson. But before we get into his finances of today, can you walk us down memory lane and talk about his career and how he made his money until he was elected to the House?
Absolutely, Brittany. So Mike Johnson was born in 1972, Shreveport, Louisiana. It's a mid-sized city near the Texas border. Johnson was, working class family. He went to college and law school in Louisiana, and started a career as a public interest lawyer. I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But public interest lawyer for a long time. He did a brief stint as the dean of a private law school that was a private Christian law school that was trying to start up in Louisiana. It didn't actually end up going anywhere. He resigned after 2 years, and the law school never actually ended up opening due to issues with the sort of parent school that it worked with. And after that, again, continued to work in law. He did less than a single term in the Louisiana State House of Representatives, and then was elected to Congress.
And in your piece for Forbes, you note that he built his legal career by focusing on religious liberty issues. Can you touch on that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Religious liberty issues is kind of a broad umbrella term that I'm using there, and that's how he markets his legal career. But he was a lawyer and a spokesperson for the Alliance Defense Fund, now known as the Alliance Defending Freedom, but so the ADF. This is an organization that he worked at for much of his career, especially in the 2000s. And they're an organization that defends, what they say defends people of faith. Often from government. Some cases that you might think of that they have taken up involve Christian schools or other religious organizations getting funding from the government for various things that they might have otherwise been denied because they were religious organizations. They've also taken some pretty controversial stances on social issues that I think puts Johnson and the ADF kind of out of sync with a lot of sort of mainstream public opinion in the United States. In particular, and especially modern day public opinion. Going back to early in his career, he was very active in helping the ADF fight against the legalization of same-sex marriage, and even supporting laws that would have criminalized homosexual sexual acts. He wrote in a 2004 op-ed, I want to pull the quote so I get it right, but he wrote in a 2004 op-ed in a Louisiana newspaper. He warned of chaos, quote, chaos and sexual anarchy, including people marrying their pets, if same-sex marriage were to become legal in the state of Louisiana. So, like I said, I think this is all notable and interesting because it really gives full of insight into the background of the guy who is now second in line for the presidency, and these kinds of views may be informing public policy.
Really interesting. Thanks for your reporting there. But let's talk about the money component here. How did his salaries from his legal career compare to when he began working in government?
So Mike Johnson wasn't doing sort of complex international mergers and acquisitions or intellectual property law or one of these things that makes you lots and lots of money. Mike Johnson was doing public interest law, which notoriously does not pay as well as some of these other big areas of law. His salaries, right before he entered office, were actually pretty comparable to what he made as a legislator. Now, his House salary, $174,000, that is certainly nothing to sneeze at. And he was making roughly that much as a lawyer right beforehand. But we're not talking about sort of the enormous millions of dollars that you might have seen in the private practice, say for some of the justices on the Supreme Court, which I've also done reporting on. So we're talking about fairly comparable amounts here.
If you and I were having this conversation a year ago, I bet most people would say, who? Once we said Congressman Mike Johnson, he wasn't well known until former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's ouster in the fall. Can you talk about how Mike Johnson became Speaker?
So Kevin McCarthy, former Speaker Kevin McCarthy now, and former Congressman Kevin McCarthy right now, notably. He was Speaker of the House after Republicans retook the House by a very narrow majority in the 2022 midterms. He got elected after a long, protracted Speaker fight in which the sort of far right wing of his caucus was trying to extract concessions from him on how he was going to run the House. There was a bit of a revolt led by Matt Gaetz, Republican from Florida, he and a couple of others in the Republican caucus managed to, again with the help of Democrats who were never going to vote for Kevin McCarthy as Speaker, managed to actually oust him as Speaker. And they did that, they said, because he had worked with Democrats to pass spending bills in a way that he had told them he would not. So he'd lost the trust of some of these members. And when you have an extremely narrow majority, you need the trust of every member you have. So after Kevin McCarthy was ousted, you had this sort of saga of speaker after speaker after speaker candidate being put up and then rejected by the House of Representatives over and over and over. And the GOP didn't seem like they were going to be able to consolidate on things. It took several weeks. Eventually, they landed on Mike Johnson. He's kind of a backbencher. He was only really known before this for leading efforts to overturn the 2020 election, leading those legal efforts to do so. So very pro-Trump guy here. But he was not a particularly prominent figure in the House of Representatives, and then he became the Speaker of the House.